Hey guys, it's Mr. Bosher. I just want to make a quick video going over the paper assignments that you had on Wednesday. Because a few of you messaged me and said, hey, I'm not sure if I'm doing this the right way, I don't really understand. So I'm just going to talk about a few examples to sort of help you with those problems, okay? For a majority, it looked like you guys all feel good about the exponential one. It's the quadratic. So if you see here on my 3 examples I'm going to go over are questions from the quadratic. I'm going to do 3 for you. But I just want you to remember what you're checking for, okay? Because the rules don't change, and I want to make that very clear. Whenever you get a graph and they ask for domain and range, it's always going to be the same things that you're looking for. Even if the graph looks different and it looks strange, it does not matter, okay? You're still going to ask yourself the same questions. So for domain, we ask ourselves, okay, what kind of value? And we find that it's x. And then we remind ourselves, what directions can I go? I can go left and right. So basically, we're just going to try to find what number do I put for left and what number do I put for right. Okay? Unless I have arrows, then we learn that sometimes we just erase, okay, if we have an arrow. But if you notice, I try to give you this assignment because there are no arrows. And a lot of questions on like your STAR test and my quiz will have no arrows. But Alex, for some reason, doesn't have a lot of problems like that, okay? So that's what we're going to practice is like, hey, when you don't have any arrows in the problem, what do we do, okay? But same questions, right? Domain, you look left, you look right, and same thing for range. Anytime you're looking for the range, you're going to look for bottom and top because we're using y values. And you've probably heard me say it enough times now that, hey, I can only move up and down, so I got to look from the bottom to the top. Other than that, and filling in like, left, right, bottom, and top and finding those numbers, there's only one extra step, which is, hey, do I have equals to or do I not have equals to? How do I do that? Is it filled in or not filled in? Okay, so none of the rules are changing. I want to make that very clear. All right, so even if the graphs are changing, your domain and range strategy does not. All right, so let's see. I'm going to use the same strategy that I've been using for all the videos. And we're going to see how do they work with these graphs since they've kind of stumped us maybe a little bit, right? Or maybe we're not like 100% confident yet, and we want to try to hit that 100% confidence. Okay? So let's give it a try. There we go. All right, if we look at question 1, we're going to start with domain. Let's see, can I zoom in pretty far? Yeah, we're good. Okay, we're going to start with domain. And we know that domain uses x values. They told us that, which is nice. So I'm going to go ahead and try to write x. And then we know that x values can go left and right. So just because I have little space, I'm going to put capital L and capital R. So for left and right. All right. So I look on my graph and I go, okay, let me just think how far left could I go, right? If I follow my picture, where is the furthest left I can go that's still on the graph? Well, that would be that coordinate point, right? And what is the x value of that coordinate point? Well, the x value seems to be -4. Okay? I just said, where is the furthest left point on the graph? And it said -4. So I'm going to replace -4. Or sorry, I'm going to replace L with -4. There we go. All right, and before I move on, let's go ahead and ask ourselves, do I need to use an equals to or do I need to not use an equals to? Well, again, that comes down to if the point is filled in or not filled in. So if I look at where my arrow is pointing right now, is that point filled in or is it open? It's open. And whenever we have an open point, we do not put equals to. Okay, so right now we're good, and we just need to find the right point. Same thing, I'm just going to look at my graph and say if I wanted to find the rightmost point, the point furthest to the right on my graph, where would that be? Well, it would be all the way to the right, over there. And I say, well, I want x values, so what x value will I get? I get 2, right? The x value of that coordinate point is 2. So I'm going to replace that part of my inequality with a 2. And then I ask myself again, do I put the equals to or do I not put the equals to? Well, since the point is open, I'm going to leave it as just x is less than 2. Okay? There's no equals to on there. So, that's how we would do domain, right? And let's think about it. our inequality says that whatever my x value is, it needs to be greater than -4. So if I pick a number greater than -4, let's see, something on the graph like right here, well, that's -3, right? The x value of that is -3. Is that in between -4 and 2? Yeah, because x needs to be between -4 and 2. What if I use this coordinate point? The x value is 1. Okay, well, that's still in between -4 and 2. What if I pick this x value? That's 0, right? The x value is 0. That's still in between -4 and 2, right? So that's how you can kind of check your domain and say, does it make sense? If I keep picking points from the graph, does it actually fit in between these two numbers? For us, it does, right? No matter what point I pick on the graph, I am in between -4 and 2. All right. How about range? I feel like this is where a lot of people got stuck, okay? They were not sure how to go about range because when we've done quadratics, we've only really had a bottom or a top, but not both, right? You're so used to having arrows that you forgot that you can have both a bottom and a top, okay? So let me show you. Again, it tells us that range is y, so that's nice. They reminded us we're going to use y values. And we go from the bottom, so I'll put capital B, to the top, right? Y values go up and down. So I'm going to ask myself, where is the bottommost part of this graph? So if I look at this quadratic function, right, this U shape, where is the bottom of the U? The bottom of the U is right there. What is the y value of that? Well, if you look right next to it, it says -6 is the y value. So we're going to go ahead and say -6. It kind of looks like a B. Let's try that again. -6. There we go. But now, we have to ask ourselves, do we put an equals to? Or do we keep it as just -6 is less than y? Well, did they mark the coordinate point? No, they did not mark it for you. So we don't really know if it's filled in or open immediately. We have to think about it. Well, remember when I said that if they don't draw the coordinate point, but it's a bold line, that means that it would be a bold point, right? It's filled in. And notice that when I drew it filled in because it was on a bold line. So when we draw it ourselves, we draw it when it's filled in. So if it's filled in, we put the equals to. Okay? Because it's a bold line, we know that that's the same thing as a filled in coordinate point. So we're going to put the equals to. All right. Hopefully that made sense. That was a good reminder. But I'm not done because I still haven't searched for the top. Now, if this had arrows, right, it kept going, and it had arrows, I could say, well, I don't really have a top, right, because the arrows tell me it's going to go forever. So I don't really have a stopping point. However, we don't have arrows on this graph like we are used to. We actually have stopping points at the top. And I also have two options. I could use this coordinate point or this coordinate point because their y value is the same, right? They're both the same amount as high, so I could choose either one. Now, if one of them was like up here, right, let's say this one continues up here, I would have to choose this one because it's taller, right? You're always going to choose the thing at the top or the tallest thing. But because they're at the same level, it doesn't matter which one I pick. All right? So what is the y value of that top point, either one of them? Well, it's 2. The y value is 2. So we could say, well, I also have a top value in this problem, and that value is 2. And go, okay, but what about the symbol? Do you put the equals to, or is there no equals to? Well, no matter which coordinate point I pick, they're both not filled in. And whenever they're not filled in, we don't put the equals to. Oh, there we go. We do not put the equals to. So this would be our final answer for question 1. Okay? Whenever you have endpoints, you're allowed to have numbers on both sides. I think that's something that we might have gotten used to not having from Alex assignments. And that's why I've been trying to get you something that isn't on Alex, because unfortunately it doesn't have a lot of problems where you have endpoints on both sides. Okay? So hopefully that example kind of maybe shows like what you may be getting stuck on as you're working through this. But if you need more, or if you just want to check your answers for 4 and 7, I'm going to go through those real fast. Okay, using the same method, right? Left and right, bottom, top. right? Filled in point or not filled in. That's all we got to check. All right, question 4. It tells us that domain is X. Cool, right? We probably know that by now, but thanks for the reminder. So I'm going to put X. And then I'm going to say, well, X values we should know by now go left and right. So I'm going to put left and then right. So I look at my graph and I say, okay, what is the furthest point to the left? Well, it seems like it would be that point right there, that open point. What is the X value of that open point to the left? It looks like it is -4. So we're going to go ahead and erase and put -4. Before I move on, should I put the equals to on this -4 or just leave it as it is? Well, it's an open point, so I should leave it as it is, right? Should not put an equals to. Now we move on to the right. If I look at my graph, what is the furthest coordinate point to the right? Seems like it's this coordinate point right here. Okay, what is its X value? The X value is 2. So I can go ahead, replace this with a 2. But before I move on, should I put an equals to, or should I leave it the way it is? Well, the coordinate point this time is filled in. So if it's filled in, we say that it's equal to 2 as well, because it actually does hit the 2 on our graph. All right, so we have -4 is less than X, which is less than or equal. Oh, I put the equals in the wrong place. Less than or equal to 2. Basically, any X value on this graph, right, on this upside down U shape here, its X value should be in between those two numbers. All right, let's try the range. Range is Y. We know that Y values go up and down. Okay, so I'm going to say we're going to go from the bottom to the top. So I look at my graph and I say, where would be the most bottom part of my graph? What goes down the furthest? Well, that would be this coordinate point, right? If I look at that entire graph, what point reaches the furthest down? What is the bottommost part? It'd be that coordinate point. And I say, well, what do I care about right now, X or Y? I care about Y values. So what's the Y value? 1. So I could say, well, the bottom of my range should be 1. Okay, can you be equal to 1? Or is it going to be just 1 is less than Y? Well, the coordinate point was open, so I'm going to leave it as it is, right? There's going to be no equals to. All right, we move to the top. If I look at this graph, does it look like it has a stopping point towards the top, or does it have arrows that go forever? Well, I don't see any arrows, other than the ones I drew, right? But the problem itself does not start with arrows. So I say, well, the top looks like it's about right here. Okay? And the Y value for that, I kind of covered it up. It looks like it said 6 right there. So I could say my top of the range, the furthest my graph can go upwards, is up to 6. Okay, well, is it equal to 6, or does it almost get to 6? Well, I had to draw the coordinate point, and it was on a bold line. So when I draw a coordinate point on a bold line, that means that I have a closed in or filled in coordinate point, so we do have the equals to. So our range would be 1 is less than Y, which is less than or equal to 6. Okay, which basically says if you take any coordinate point on this graph, the Y value should be in between -1, or sorry, not -1, +1 to 6. So if I choose any coordinate point, like this coordinate point right here, has a Y value of 4. That's in between 1 and 6. This value right here, it has a Y value of 3. That's in between 1 and 6. Even this one over here, right, is also 4. Still in between 1 and 6. So any coordinate point you pick needs to be in between those numbers. That's a good sign that your range is correct. All right. Last one that we're going to do in this video. We start with domain. They tell us it's X, but we already knew that. We know that X values go left and right, so we're going to put L and R. And we're going to see, well, where is my leftmost point of this graph? So I move to the left, and I look over there, and I say, well, that's about the furthest left I can go. What's the x value for that point? Looks like -1. So I'm going to replace L with -1. And I ask myself, well, should I put the equals to or leave it as it is? Well, it's an open point, and we know that means that we just leave it. We're not going to put an equals to. Cool. I move on to the right. If I look at my graph and try to find the most right point, there's my most right point. What's the x value? 3. So I can replace that r with a 3, and I ask myself, do I put the equals to or do I leave it as it is? Well, the coordinate point is open, so I would not put the equals to. We get really close to 3, but we don't technically hit 3. We stop right before it because the point is not filled in. And so that's our domain. -1 is less than x, and x is less than 3. Okay, so x has to be in between -1 and 3. Let's try the range. Let's get rid of all of that. The range uses y. We know that y values go up and down, so we're going to search from the bottom to the top, or B and T. If I look at my graph, where is the bottom-most point or part of this graph? Well, that would be right here, right? That's the furthest down my graph can go. What y value does it have? -3. So I go and I say, well, my bottom was at -3, but do I add the equals to or leave it as it is? Well, I had to draw the coordinate point, and that when I drew that coordinate point, it was on a bold line, so that point is going to be filled in, right? It's on a bold line, which means the point would be filled in where I drew it. So I would put an equals to, because I had to fill in the coordinate point. Now for the top. What are we going to get? Well, here's a good example of like how do I choose between the two endpoints for my top. Right? I have this option and I have this option. Well, which one is further up? Right? Which one is truly the top of your graph? Which one can reach the highest between the two? Well, it's going to be the one on the right. Right? In this scenario, it's going to be the one that I still have marked. So in this scenario, you would just say, well, the one that goes further up is going to be the number that I'm going to use because it is truly the top of my graph. Okay? So we're going to say that the y value for my top point out of all the other points on the graph, my very top point is 5. And then I ask myself, well, do I put the equals to or do I leave it for that point? Well, the point that I used was open. So an open point tells me that I do not have an equals to. So that would be my final answer. Y is between -3 and 5, and I can be equal to -3. Right? So -3 is less than or equal to y, which is less than 5. Cool. So hopefully that clears it up. I think the main one that was catching people off guard was something like question 1, specifically, because you're used to the arrows being there, and then you're like, well, do I have a top when they're like at the same level? Like there's a few parts that can confuse you. But yes, when you have two endpoints, it's very common that for range and domain, you're going to have both numbers, left and right, bottom and top. Okay? It's when you get arrows is when you start to get things like real numbers, or you only get a bottom, or you only get like something to the right. That's when we have to be careful. Okay? But when you don't see arrows, chances are you're going to have both sides. There's going to be a number on both sides for domain and range. Okay? So hopefully that kind of reminds us on how to do those. It helps us out there. If you're still having trouble, you can send me a message. I'll see if I can get any last minute help for you because you do have a quiz on Friday. But don't worry too much about the quiz. I realize that I haven't been there. I just want to see where we're at. And when I come back, we'll try to, we'll see what we need to do and get us caught up and we'll be fine. Okay, so try your best. Make sure you get at least comfortable enough with domain and range. Hopefully we can get like 100% comfortable. That would be the goal, but just do your best. Let me know if you have any questions, last minute questions before your quiz on Friday. Other than that, good luck on your paper assignment and have a great day.